Burley just said to me, now with that introduction, don't screw it up. Dr. Hamrick, or Dr. Gilbert, Reverend Harvey, Coach Doc, the coaching staff of the Thundering Herd football team, the players, the members of the Young Thundering Herd. What an honor it is to be able to be here to participate in this. This is something that's on checking off of the bucket list. Mike, you almost screwed up my speech. Started thinking some of the things he's doing, and I started getting fired up to kind of start talking about some other things. But Doc, one thing I learned from my dad when he was coaching, you put a game plan in place, and just because some things happen in pregame doesn't mean that you change your game plan, right? Right. Reverend Steve mentioned that this time last year, Reggie was speaking to us. We miss him. We never dreamed that was going to be the last time that many of us would ever speak to him. I realized this morning when I was getting ready that I was starting to channel my inner Reggie. Had the white shirt, the cream pants, the pastel colors. I had to get the navy jacket on so that I wouldn't look like I was trying to copy after Reggie last year, because nobody can copy Reggie. But I can assure you this, I am not breaking out in a song of Patches in the middle of this. I'm a son of Marshall, a proud son of Marshall. I'm so proud to be a member of the Young Thundering Herd. Everything I am and everything I ever hoped to be was shaped by the fact that I was a member of the Young Thundering Herd. My idols were players who stepped forward in 1971. Some I never got to play alongside, but I feel like we were teammates just the same. Mark Miller, Reggie, Nate Ruffin, Jack Crabtree, Rick Mextroth, all were guys that I looked up to. I was telling Mark a little story. Mark won the top GPA award for all of the football team when he was graduating. And I was sitting out, I was a recruit, had just signed with Marshall, and was watching, I thought, I want to do that. Ended up graduating with honors, pressing with that. Had a constant and lasting influence. So many of my teammates are here today. Those of you who know Bill Forbes, be careful. If you start to see him, his nostrils start to spread a little bit, he's going to hit you. I told you I'd tell him that. One teammate left a lasting impression. He left a lasting impression to me at what college football was all about. It's Alan Meadows. Raise your hand, Alan. On the first day of pads and two-a-day practice, I was a skinny 180-pound quarterback, and they brought me down to run the offense against the starting defense. In the huddle, the coach called an option play. The option meant that the quarterback had to fake a handoff to the fullback and then attack the defensive end and then decide whether you're going to run or pitch the ball. So I called the snap, faked the handoff to the fullback, head down, straight down to attack the defensive end, and I'm making a decision whether to pitch or to run the ball. And then all of a sudden, this big arm reached out and grabbed me. All in one fell swoop, grabbed me by the jersey and slammed me down. And all of a sudden, I'm looking up, and there's this big shadow staring down at me, this big paw pushing down on my chest, and it was Alan Meadows. And he looked at me in the eye, and all of that, all so quick, and it seemed so slow at all these years later, but pushed down on me and looked at me and said, "Welcome to college football, freshman." I came on this campus as a young man who just wanted to play football. They offered me a scholarship, and I was lucky to have my education paid for to enable me and allow me to play the game that I loved. Now, my family impressed upon me that if I'm coming onto campus and I'm playing ball, I am a student, athlete, student first. Fact is, if they had pressed the matter, I would have paid them to let me play. I love playing that much. And I've tried to pay that scholarship back so many ways and so many different times during the years. All I wanted was to play. That's why I played so many different positions. Mike told you that I played tight end. Told you a little bit ago I came as a quarterback, played wingback, played wide receiver. As a matter of fact, I'm not embarrassed to say Randy Moss broke all of my records by the third game that he ever played. Chad had a much easier way. He broke my records too. In the first game against Chattanooga, third set of downs, he had beaten every record that I had. I was blessed to be a good athlete, and I understood the game because my dad was a coach. And while I played so many different positions, I came to understand that if you work hard, you be diligent, you'll find your way on the field, and you'll learn different ways to be able to contribute to the team. Interestingly, that pattern has followed me throughout my career. I've learned that being exposed to so many different disciplines prepares you to provide a unique leadership that not many others could provide. To be the right person at the right place at the right time. You may notice that we have displayed the team photo of the 1970 team. During my playing days, we saw that picture every day when we would come into the offices for meetings or to look at film. This framed photo hangs in my office behind my desk. It's the first thing anyone sees when they walk into my office. I also had this displayed on the stage when I was being inaugurated as mayor for the first time. I had it displayed during my inaugural to remind the citizens of the town that we had experienced difficulty and heartache. And while we had experienced difficulty and heartache before, nothing was more difficult for our city to overcome. With all the things that are challenging our community, nothing was more difficult than to overcome having 75 people senselessly killed on a hillside outside of town. I reminded them that sitting among them at the inauguration were many of the families who had been left behind, who had grown up to become leaders of our community. Many of them are here today. We were taken then to our knees and not only found a way to be able to stand again, but to stand and to move forward, holding on to the memory of those who passed. I have this picture prominently displayed in my office so I can tell those who are visiting our town that the picture represents the character, heart, compassion, and passion of the people of our community. If they want to understand our community, understand how the events of November 14th, 1970 shaped our character. It defines us to this very day. If the person is from Huntington, then I use the photo to remind them of all that we've been through and that no difficulty is too enormous that we can't overcome. This ceremony is fitting, for we honor those who perished on November 14th, 1970. That chilly, rainy night, began the winter of our community's discontent. That long winter, beginning in November, eventually gave way to spring. And in the circle of life, spring established a continuation. It represented that from the pain of a dark, cold winter, life can proceed. The question that faced the Marshall community and the Huntington community also in a very personal way, the families of those who were lost, the question that hung in the air was how do we continue on? Life can be a cruel companion. We learned that life is a demanding instructor that insists that we continue on. Coach Holliday speaks to his team about competitive excellence. A player never knows when his number is being called. And when his number is being called, he needs to be prepared to step up. But what happens when there isn't anyone left to call? What happens when someone can't be called upon to step up? Within that answer, is the majesty of Marshall University and the greater Huntington community. The cruelty of that fateful night left a team without coaches to call upon, without seasoned players to call upon. It left a community without seasoned leaders to call upon. Yet that void left this university and this community to choose whether or not it was going to call upon the next person to step up, whether or not it was going to create an environment that would enable or allow the next person to step up. The question was much larger than whether a football program would continue. The real question was whether a community would stagnate in mourning or rise up and never forget, because we never give up. That's the reason for today's ceremony. To recall why we are here today. And to celebrate that there were those who decided to step forward, decided never to give up. We are here to remember those 75 who were lost on November 14th, 1970, and we're here to celebrate those who stepped forward. We're here to celebrate those who chose to step forward because it provided us a lesson that lives through the ages. We will never forget because we never give up. When the plane crashed on November 14th, there were few immediately available to step up, few available to answer the call. What is the difference between Marshall and any other school in the nation? Every team has to reload the next year. Every team has a tradition to maintain based upon those who came before. But what's the difference between Marshall's football team and every other college team in America? The 1970 players, the young coaches, the community boosters, all died. All died young. The football team could not reload. The program had to start from scratch. The community also had to start from scratch. The sad effect, obvious effect of the crash is that we lost everyone. The much more sad effect is that none of the athletes, coaches, staff, or community boosters got to live to complete their mission. As a result, the contribution to society by 75 souls was lost. Those of us who were called to fill the void owe them a life of purpose and meaning. Those of us who were called in the years following reflect back with unimagined determination. We helped keep a program alive when people were clamoring for it to be discontinued. Yet we did so much more. In December 1987, Marshall was playing Appalachian State in Boone, North Carolina for the 1AA National Championship semifinals game. So many of us were there. The game was played on a wet, cold, dreary day. The Herd won 24-10, and they were going to play in the national championship game in Pocatello, Idaho. And as I was walking out of the stadium, I bumped into 3 old teammates who I hadn't seen in over 10 years. It was surreal that we managed to find each other that day in that crowd at that time. It was Bob Birch, Fred Bader, and John Kravik. We ran into each other. I don't remember a word that was said. But our eyes met, tears dripping off our cheeks. And then we knew the purpose for our struggles in the 1970s. The program stood on our shoulders. We didn't have to stand in shame. We never forget because we never give up. Since then, I've come to understand that we all have a larger purpose of the relationships that we established from our collective experience. Nate Ruffin and I worked together to assure that the first African American was hired in the Huntington Fire Department in the history of the city of Huntington. I was able to leverage my position in the West Virginia legislature to assist in seeing that the Joan C. Edwards football stadium was being constructed to replace Fairfield Stadium. Eddie Hamrick, Mike's brother, and I worked together again when I was in the legislature, and Eddie was the director of the State Department of Natural Resources, and we worked together to advance the protection of our state's natural resources. Mark Mitchell helped me begin a life in finance that enabled me to change the lives of working people throughout Appalachia and the Midwest. And Mike Hamrick and I have found that through our lives' travels, we reached the point in our careers that we can together use our talents to assist our university, our city, and our state to achieve national prominence. We've all been able to do these because of an unspoken brotherhood and trust developed. We understand the fundamentals of how transformative leadership works. Trust, dignity, and integrity leave a strong legacy of opportunity to those who come after. These were the essential lessons for a group of young athletes to learn in order to be prepared to do great things that would be required of them in their ensuing years. As difficult as the days would be in the future, none would be as difficult as having to step in and fill a void of the promising future of the 75 souls. We don't come here to reminisce on how difficult it was. Nothing was as difficult as having to deal with the tragic event of November 14. We will never forget because we never give up. We come here to remember that when we stepped forward and answered the call to compete on the field left empty that November night, we answered the call to carry on in all our daily lives, to attempt to fill the void, to fill the void of those people who were expected to be teachers, doctors, attorneys, coaches, contractors, laborers, police officers, bankers, brokers, firefighters, community leaders, pastors, and everything that makes up a community. Life called each of us to serve our lives in honor of each person who was taken away too soon. Our calling included a call to leadership. Leadership to be provided in numerous roles. The crucible of tragedy in which our calling developed helped us understand that leaders make hard decisions and then live with them. Leaders do not doubt, they only decide. Our days of development in the 1970s and the refinement in the decades since have prepared us as few have ever been. The challenge in our lives, in our communities, in our society revealed that we were prepared for a time like this. The young thundering herd is no longer young. We're comprised of teachers, coaches, administrators, lawyers, doctors, bankers, business leaders, pastors, laborers, and salespeople. We've reached the apex of our careers. We're seen as leaders, as visionaries, and examples of dignity and integrity. We've won, and we have lost. We've stepped forward, and we've fallen backward. We've loved, and we've cried. We've lived. We come to acknowledge that with the 1971 team and each team in the 48 seasons hence, we lived to fill their void. It's being passed on year to year. The 2019 Thundering Herd football team carries on that tradition. We will never forget because we never give up. Men, the members of the 2019 team, know this. Once you take that jersey off for the final time, the ultimate competition of your lives will set before you. You will continue to be expected to defeat all who you continue to compete against, not with brawn, but with finesse and mental acuity. Prepare yourselves. You're 31 points down at halftime. We never give up. You're in a 3-game losing streak. We never give up. A student athlete begins to have trouble with his grades in some classes. We never give up. A child makes a wrong decision and starts to head down the wrong path. We never give up. A community starts to suffer the ravages of drugs. We never give up. The economy comes to take hold of jobs and place an economic challenge on a university. We never give up. Players of 2019's team, prepare yourselves. We are the bearers of history to prevent the past from being forgotten. We are the carriers of hope to overcome the indignity of despair. We are the source of solutions in a world that seeks assurance. We never forget who passed before us because we never give up. We are the members of the young thundering herd. We never give up. We are Marshall. We never give up. We never forget. We never give up. That's our call. That's our commitment. That's our passion. We never give up.